Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, today we are officially putting on our hats as financial detectives. We're about to expose the truth, hiding right behind those glossy enterprise software pitches. You know the exact ones I'm talking about, right? They promise the absolute moon, massive hours saved, incredible productivity lifts, stuff that just seems, quite frankly, a little too good to be true. So today, we're going to unpack the hidden costs of software and learn exactly how to audit a vendor's ROI claim before you ever even think about signing on that dotted line.
Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever sat in a vendor presentation and seen a massive number exactly like this flash up? 335% ROI. Wow. I mean, it is a staggering claim. It's practically designed in a lab to make your CFO's eyes literally light up. But, as financial detectives, we really have to stop and ask ourselves, is this actually reality? Or is it just highly optimized marketing?
To figure that out, we're going to use what we call our audit protocol. Think of this as our tactical roadmap to dismantle those sales pitches and reclaim our IT budgets. We'll be looking at, first, the vendor's magic number. Second, uncovering the hidden costs. Third, activity versus real outcomes. Fourth, designing falsifiable pilots. And finally, number 5, outcome-based contracting.
All right, moving right into step 1 of our investigation, the vendor's magic number. We really need to deconstruct these glossy ROI claims and question exactly where vendors are pulling these massive numbers from.
So, when procurement teams ask vendors for the actual study behind their big headline numbers, they typically hand over one of 3 famously flawed metric sources. Now, here's the trick, and it's a clever one. All 3 of these sources can be factually accurate while remaining completely and utterly useless for your specific business case. First up, customer case studies. The problem? They lack a denominator. They'll show you a highly successful deployment driven by a super motivated internal champion, but they entirely exclude the baseline failure rates or all the other companies that struggled. Second, commissioned analyst reports. These are meticulously modeled, sure, but they assume absolutely perfect conditions. And third, vendor user surveys. Now, these suffer heavily from survivorship bias. Why? Because churned users, the ones who couldn't actually get the software to work and just canceled their contracts, well, they simply don't reply to the surveys.
Let's look a little closer at those analyst reports, like the really popular Forrester Total Economic Impact studies. They frequently rely on what's called a composite organization. Essentially, this is a meticulously designed profile representing an ideal customer operating under perfect conditions. It is explicitly not a generic statistical average. So that massive 335% ROI? Well, it's mathematically accurate for this phantom ideal organization that uses the technology exactly as intended. But it certainly does not represent a guaranteed outcome for you, operating in the messy, unpredictable day-to-day reality of your own corporate environment.
Section 2. Uncovering the hidden costs. It is time to rip the Band-Aid right off the ROI calculator and peel back the layers on the massive costs those vendor models conveniently leave out. Here's the truth. Implementation services typically cost 1 to 2 times the annual software license fee, and honestly, they can stretch to 3 times for highly complex scopes. Software licensing represents just a fraction of the total cost of ownership, yet somehow, up to 50% of companies wildly underestimate this implementation multiplier. A vendor's calculator might magically show a positive return by month 6, but it almost universally ignores the massive initial capital expenditure that's required just to map workflows, configure the system, and actually reach your go-live date.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how perfectly it contrasts the vendor's year-one dream scenario with the audited, negative return reality. Let's think about the vendor standard column first. A $100,000 subscription, a basic $20,000 for setup, which assumes perfect, clean data and 0 training downtime, by the way, resulting in a claimed net positive impact of $380,000. But check out the audited reality. When you actually factor in the 1.5 times multiplier for implementation services, plus the $50,000 hidden cost to clean up data and build custom integrations, and then another $25,000 productivity dip while your team actually learns how to use the system, well, suddenly that genuinely effective tool is actually producing a negative return of $75,000 in its very first year.
And if we really want to talk about the ultimate Trojan horse of hidden costs right now, we absolutely have to talk about artificial intelligence. Take this staggering statistic from the RAND Corporation, for example. 80% of AI projects fail to reach meaningful production deployment. 80%. And actually, MIT research even suggests that 95% of generative AI pilots fail to scale to production or deliver any measurable financial returns whatsoever.
So, you're probably wondering, why is the failure rate so astronomical? Well, it's because of a silent prerequisite. AI requires an expensive, clean, and governed data foundation. The primary obstacle usually isn't that the vendor's algorithm is broken, it's that the buyer's data is fragmented and just completely messy. Around 63% of organizations lack this AI-ready data infrastructure. But vendors? They just silently assume you possess clean, centralized data right out of the gate. If your organization doesn't meet this unstated prerequisite, that incredible vendor ROI claim is completely nullified before the software is even installed.
Moving on to Section 3, activity versus real outcomes. We need to shift our perspective here and focus on measuring what actually matters to the business. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how to separate the noise from the actual value. We really need to draw a hard line between mere activity and tangible outcomes. Documents drafted, API calls, or AI replies generated, those are just activity. Support tickets resolved without human intervention or recovered revenue, now those are tangible outcomes. Vendors frequently blur this line. A generative AI tool might boast a 40% reduction in document drafting time, but drafting a document is just an activity. If your employee spends that saved time browsing the internet or sitting in unstructured meetings, the business outcome remains absolutely zero. It doesn't map to your operating model. A credible ROI claim has to tie directly to a measurable business result that your operating model actually values.
Which brings us to Section 4, designing falsifiable pilots, setting up a foolproof trap. Because let's be honest, a pilot without the possibility of failure is literally just a delayed purchase.
Let's move to and see how this builds into a strict DevOps-supported clinical evaluation process. This right here is the anatomy of a falsifiable pilot. First, the baseline. You absolutely need an exact empirical measurement of your current state before the software is ever introduced. Second, the threshold. Establish the minimum viable improvement required to even justify the cost. Third, the duration. You have to set a strict, unmovable timeline, like exactly 45 days, no extensions allowed. And fourth, the kill condition. This is a specific failure metric that automatically cancels the procurement process. I really cannot stress this point enough. Without a kill condition, teams will continually move the goalposts just to justify keeping a failing tool alive. You'll hear endless excuses about steep learning curves or unexpected data issues. No way. You have to establish hard failure triggers right up front. Tell the vendor straight up, if this tool requires human intervention on more than 25% of invoices by day 45, the pilot is killed. Doing this prevents pilot paralysis and forces the vendor to prove their big claims immediately.
And finally, Section 5, outcome-based contracting. This is our final resolution, where we shift the financial risk right back to the vendor by turning their own glossy claims into binding contractual obligations.
So if your audit reveals that a vendor's ROI claim relies heavily on perfect execution, you counter with these outcome-based pricing principles. You demand to be charged for results, not just software access. A really prime example of this is Intercom's pricing model for their AI agent Finn. They charge 99 cents only per successful ticket resolution. This inherently aligns the vendor's revenue directly with the buyer's success. If the software fails to resolve the issue and it has to escalate to a human, well, the vendor is not paid. Proposing a contract model like this instantly exposes the true confidence a vendor actually has in their own marketing materials.
So the crucial point is best summarized by Baytech Consulting. Whether buying off-the-shelf software or building bespoke solutions, an ROI that ignores the friction of user adoption and complex integrations is a liability. Remember, this rigorous auditing framework isn't reserved exclusively for third-party SaaS vendors. It applies equally to your own internal custom builds too. Any proposed business case must reflect the messy, realistic friction of total cost of ownership, regardless of who authored the slide deck.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If their ROI is guaranteed, will they actually tie your contract to it? The next time you're sitting in a vendor meeting and they flash some massive percentage, put on your detective hat. Demand the denominator. Uncover the hidden costs of software implementation. Separate the activity from the real outcomes. Establish a strict kill condition and ruthlessly protect your IT budget. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time as we continue to break down the complex topics you need to understand.